So it was unfortunate. So when I knew that, I was like, man, this isn't going to be the magic that he and I were creating together anymore.
Oh, wow. So you had that much like faith in him and connectivity with him that you knew as soon as somebody else came in, it just wasn't going to be the same.
Pretty much.
Wow.
Pretty much. And I mean, you were talking about coming into one of the hardest employment markets we've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, we had tried to hire somebody to replace him because I knew that he was getting pulled to Atlanta. So we were trying to build those pieces so that he could get there. And I made a bad employment decision. Plain and simple. The guy who we hired was not who he said he was, even though we did a background check and all kinds of checks.
So he was like a criminal.
He was.
Oh,
yes.
man. Wow.
Yes.
Man, what was that like? That realization, like, oh my gosh, I just hired a criminal for my business.
Yeah. That was scary.
Oh, I bet.
So, we went back and forth again. It was hardest market to hire somebody in. So we hired a headhunter to like find somebody. And we're like, hey, here's our rough parameters, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay. Guy's been doing this for 20, 30 years. I mean, he knows what he's doing. He's a headhunter. He's good at it. Still would hire him if I needed to find an employee. But long story short, we found the guy and the references checked out. I even called them on top of the headhunter calling them. I am a sleuth. I love to research. So I was like, okay, are these real references? Are these friends of his? Like everything checked out. And then one day, and I don't know if you guys have this in y'all's real estate group, but we have an app called Forewarn.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If you don't have it, talk to your MLS and like, hey, this is pretty awesome because it's for realtors and real estate professionals. And we get it through our MLS, Chattanooga's MLS.
Okay.
Is tied in with their offerings.
Yeah, I don't have that yet. I'm going to look into it.
Definitely. Because what happens is you look up a phone number and it tells you basically who owns that phone number. If they have a history of any criminal activity, what that is, any bankruptcies or liens that are against them.
Oh, wow.
Any properties that they own from a phone number.
Yeah.
And so it's incredible. And basically a number had called me and I looked up the phone number and it was him calling me. And his name wasn't the same. His last name was different. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Because I finally figured out, okay, it was this guy.
Yeah.
And I looked it up, and the more I looked up this new name, all this stuff came up on the internet with his picture. And I was like, okay, wow. And then I got to digging, and I was like, okay, what's his social? Social on his paperwork that he filled out for us was this.
I'm guessing it wasn't a jaywalking ticket.
No. The things that came up, which are public record, because I finally found him on Google once I had his real name, were fraud, prescription fraud. Not that long ago.
Man.
A few years ago. I mean, it wasn't decades ago. It was a few years ago. Which... had the person, I have a history myself. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So had the person just come out and said, hey, here's my past. Here's what happened, but here's how I've overcome that. And here's what I've done. It would have been much easier to have the conversation.
Right.
But when I got to finally looking at what he filled out on his social for us, and I said, hey, you got the background check for this guy? He said, yeah, here. And it had the Social Security on that one. I was like, those Social Securities don't match. And that was the realization.
That's a red flag.
That is the red flag.
Yeah.
The reddest of flags. Reddest of flags.
So did he end up taking somebody else's Social Security number? Or
somebody from California, apparently from a property management company he worked for in California.
And they just he stole it, or they just let him have it?
I don't know. Once I realized that we had two
different people,
two different socials, I said this is not going to work. So we had to pivot. But that decision mixed with my friend having to then leave soon after that facilitated a sale.